You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast. We're doing this on Tuesday, January 2nd. We are in a new year, 2024. So happy New Year to everybody out there. And hopefully your New Year's Eve wasn't ruined that much by the topic that we're about to talk about. Now, this has been a couple days coming. So we've had a couple days now to process what the Eagles did on Sunday, which is to lose to the lowly Arizona Cardinals, and one of the most embarrassing losses you're ever going to see. And today we're a little more resolute than reactionary, because we've kind of come to a conclusion here that the Eagles certainly aren't what we thought they were, and they're not going to be what we thought they could be as we move on with this season. Yes, they are in the playoffs, but by losing on Sunday, they have most likely put themselves into a 5 seed, which means they have to play a game on the road. Now, depending on who they play on the road, they could very easily get bounced in the first round. And I want you to think about that for a second. From where this season began and the hopes that it brought when they won 10 of their first 11 games and the one loss was a fluke, to where we are now, where we're talking about them as a 5th seed, having to go to somebody else's ballpark and possibly lose. Now, they're going to play a division winner. That division winner is mediocre. Whether it's the Buccaneers, whether it's the Packers, whoever it is, the Buccaneers right now or the Saints. They're tied with the Saints at 8-8. And frankly, I think that they could lose to either one of those teams in their home ballpark. So, I don't even care who it is at this point, whether it's the Bucs or the Saints. I care where the season has kind of disintegrated into. Now, this is clearly a team that's coming apart at the seams. They have lost 4 of their last 5. And the disintegration of this team is almost hard to believe. So the only way to deal with it is to kind of go back in time and try to figure out how this whole thing disintegrated. Yes, we got sucked into believing that they were the elite team in the NFC. Forget about one of the best teams in the NFC. We thought this was the number 1 team in the NFC that could chart their course through the playoffs as the number 1 seed, getting a bye and playing every one of their playoff games at home. And boy, has that changed. The joke was on us, as it turned out, because we kept denying, and I did too. I looked at a team like, well, they do good enough to win. There's something to be said about a team that does well enough to win, because they could very easily stumble. I'm looking all around the league. These supposed good teams are losing every week. The Eagles kept trudging along, boom, boom, boom. No matter how pretty it was, they still won games. So we got sucked into that, saying this is a winning character this team has. And it doesn't matter if they blow out teams. But what we did overlook was some of the warts, that they were winning games by the skin of their teeth. And we didn't look at the problems. We looked at the end result. And that's on us, because we're smarter than that. We very rarely get conned in this city when we look at a team. We really understand the merits on how good they really are. We also understand when a team is BSing us. And I didn't see it this Eagles team was BSing us until obviously when they got destroyed and had their heart taken away from them by the San Francisco 49ers. That was the game that exposed the Eagles to what they are. And then, of course, the following week that they got demolished. And now they're just trying to put together a season with tape and string and Elmer's frickin' glue. And you can't do that at this point of the year. They are what they are, and they're going to lose in the playoffs, whether it's the first round or whether it's the second round, because the second round has them playing the 49ers in San Francisco. There can't be an Eagle fan on earth who think that that's possible, that they're going to go, this team, with their defense the way it is in shambles, is going to go to San Francisco and hold the 49ers to less than 30 points to win. That is not going to happen. So they lost to the Cardinals 35-34. And before we break down what has really happened to this team in the overall, let's do the autopsy on the one of the most disappointing losses you're ever going to see in Eagle history. I mean, let's face it, it's that dramatic of a loss. It's an embarrassing loss. And let's get to the nitty-gritty. We already know that the Eagles led the game 21-6 at halftime. And they didn't play well. They were getting dominated at the line of scrimmage in the first half. And they still had a 21-6 lead. Now, was there anybody on earth who thought that they could disintegrate to the point where the Cardinals, a team that came into this game with 3 wins, a team that had terrible offensive and defensive metrics, were going to score 4 straight touchdowns in the second half? You couldn't have drawn up that script. It would have been foolish. It would have been outlandish. And yet, that's what happened. So what happens now? Let's just push forward because we already know what the numbers were. The Cardinals had 429 total yards. This is the Cardinals I'm talking about now. All right, 429, 221 rushing, with James Conner running through them like a wave runner on the Sea Isle Bay. The time of possession in this game was 40-20. The plays were 72 for the Cardinals to 46 for the Eagles. But let's get to the part where it was actually tied at 28-28. Because even watching the Cardinals score 4 straight touchdowns, you still, or 3 at that point, you still thought the Eagles aren't going to lose this game, right? So the Cardinals with the 27th ranked offense had 32 first downs in this game. Kyler Murray completed 80% of his passes with 3 touchdowns. It's the 9th time now that the Eagles have built on a double-digit lead at some point during a game. They won 2 of those 9 times that they had a double-digit lead in games. Through week 10, the Eagles had the number 1 defense in the NFL. They were allowing 60 yards per game on the ground. Since then, 153 yards per game, 4.8 yards per carry. Okay, I think we have fleshed out every little tidbit. So now let's pick up how they got there in the first place. Well, first of all, let's not do that. Let's go over the bad stuff, okay? Because at 28-28, we need to kind of look at this. Now, 28-28 came on a Murray to Wilson touchdown on 4th and 4, where they beat Keely Ringo. And now, this is an example of what the Eagles have done with their defense. They throw in guys out of desperation that aren't really ready to play. They've used aftermarket parts to throw in, and this discombobulation of a defense by tacking on players without regard to their bonding as a whole on defense has really kind of cost them. So now it's 28-28. They try an onside kick. Now, I know a lot of people thought that was strategic. I thought it was foolish because you were playing the Eagles to a hilt. To me, there was no need for desperation there trying an onside kick. So what they did was they gave the Eagles supreme field position with that onside kick. Now, a good team like the Eagles should have stuffed that right up their keister and came right back down with a short field to score a touchdown to take command of the game again. Well, what happened? That's the way we live it. This is painful. So, if you need to take a sedative right now, please do. I'll wait like 10 seconds. All right. They get to the Cardinals 20. 4:23 is left in the game. Mailata has a penalty that pushes him back to the 30. 2 straight Hurts carries are called. And then finally, a screen pass to Kenneth Gainwell that has 180-pound Devontae Smith as the lead blocker, which they've done several times this year, and each time they do it, it never works. Now, do you have to be a rocket science to figure out that that's not the play you should call there? Like, what do they think they're going to get out of that play? They've already squeezed that lemon dry. To the point now where Devontae Smith gets hurt on the play. They don't convert the first down. They have to settle for a field goal. The Eagles then let the Cardinals come right back down the field and score a touchdown with 32 seconds left to take a 35-31 lead with a James Conner plunge. 7 plays, 70 yards. The Cardinals take it down the field. All right. That's the ugly details of how that game ended. Now let's break it down. The defense of this team has turned into a joke. an amalgam of replacement parts, whether discarded from other teams. I mean, we know the discards, the Byards, the Robies, the Shaq Leonards, all these discarded guys that they thought they put themselves in such a desperate situation, they had to bring those people in to and con themselves into thinking that was going to work. All right, that's A. Young players who they didn't play early in the season, who now they throw in, and they still don't know what a rotation is. They got this guy in for a series. They got this other guy in a series. This guy's playing the slot. This guy's playing safety, and he's moving the corner. They have no idea what to do. They're scrambling around, and Patricia is trying to do something with the defense to salvage what they have, and he's making it worse. It's laughable. I can't imagine an NFL team that was supposed to be the number one team in this conference has now resorted to this kind of let's throw a dart at the wall type of defense. All right, the Eagles coaching staff. Let's look at the Eagles coaching staff, first let's look at the front four. Because the front four is supposed to be their foundation, right? Everything is based on them. Like they had the number one defense stop and run early in the season. That's because they had some bulls in there. It is clearly evident that the bulls they've had in there at defensive tackles, including the young dudes, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, have hit a wall. Fletcher Cox is now, he's at the end of his career as it is. They milked a couple of plays out of him all season, but he's got nothing left. And so, and neither does Brandon Graham. And I know everybody loves Brandon Graham and everybody loves Fletcher Cox and they get sentimental that they had to have him back. There's no way that either of those guys could be back next year as you turn the page on this. Now let's look at their defensive ends. Has Josh Sweat been in town? I haven't seen a play that he's made since Halloween. He is totally lost out there. And Reddick, who has played now, he's so desperate for a sack, he's playing undisciplined football. To say nothing of the fact that in their alignment, they've had him dropping in coverage way too much instead of just firing him to the quarterback. The whole thing is a mess. So now let's go deeper because we talked about this, and we're going to bring Darren in here in a second. And he called this way back when it happened. At this stage of the season, what in their right mind did they think was going to happen when they made a transition to demote a defensive coordinator for a new guy this late in the season? What did they think that could do to a team? Did they not think that move there was going to introduce panic in the locker room? Did they not think that players would go, oh, man, oh, no. Like, seriously, how do you deal with grown men and you don't think that that's going to have an effect? Now, people are going to say to me, well, the Bills did it. The Bills changed their offensive coordinator, pretty early in the season when they were really struggling. So earlier in the season, maybe you get away with it. Late in the season, when you've just got pounded by two elite teams, you're telling your team, oh, my God, we're in panic mode. How is that good for a football team? All right, let's move on to management. I do believe that the move to change defensive coordinators was a move that was dictated by the owner, Jeffrey Lurie. Do I have any concrete evidence of that? No, but I've seen it before. He's done it before. He is, as I've said before, Ed Snyder without the visible red ass. That's what he is behind the scenes because he just knows enough not to know anything. And he goes by analytics and he goes by reaction. And I guarantee you that after they got embarrassed by the two elite teams in the NFC, he put the orders out to Howie, who then put it down to the puppet Nick Sirianni, get rid of Desai, let's move on with somebody else. There's no question in my mind that happened. And I'm shocked that any reporters have not uncovered that yet. But even if it didn't happen that way, even if it was a Sirianni call, what does that say about Sirianni? Is he a coach who is savvy enough to read the tea leaves? Did he not think that would have caused this kind of confusion among the ranks of his players? And I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here because I don't think he made the decision. Now let's get to the general manager, who everybody was so sweet on. It's amazing how everybody just loved and worshiped Howie Roseman early in this season for putting together a team that was good enough to be 10-1. And now look. Now examine the moves under a microscope. Examine what they did from last year's team to try to outsmart themselves. C.J. Gardner-Johnson goes. Now, I'm not that big of a fan of him, but he brought attitude at least. He was one of those guys that gave you a little spunk. T.J. Edwards, again, disregarding the linebacker position, as T.J. Edwards is going on to be a productive player somewhere else. Gone. They had to sign both corners at the expense of one of those guys. As it turned out, that was probably the wrong move. And then taking guys off the street because you haven't prepared any younger guys to take over. It is just amazing to me what has happened to this team and how management has allowed this to happen. So let's bring in Darren. Darren, I know you feel that way also about the administration, and you believe the administration is majorly responsible for this decline.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, this is not the first time we've seen this type of dysfunction where the coordinators and the head coach don't seem to be in agreement, where the problems that we hear about this team. First of all, I want to ask you this, because I think not enough attention, as I've told you, is coming on the owner and the general manager and even the head coach. And let's work our way up, okay? Let's start with Nick. I like Sirianni. I really do. I like that he is the type of head coach that delegates, as opposed to a head coach that's very hands-on with everything, all the play calling, whatever. I think that's the best way to coach in the NFL. The problem with that is if you have good coordinators, they're eventually going to move on, which is what happened. Okay. But the real problem with Nick is this team's falling apart right before our eyes. It's happening on the sidelines. They can't get plays in. This is 2 weeks in a row where there is obvious screaming matches and arguments between players and coaches. It is the head coach's responsibility to get control of that. And it gets worse. It's gotten worse every week. Let's move up to the general manager, who we all know is in on meetings with scheme, with what they want to do, with their philosophies, with how they want to run the defense, and the worship of Vic Fangio, and the ignorance of an entire level of the defense. They have ignored the second level of the defense for years. They finally had a couple of young guys, a real good young guy playing middle linebacker. He goes, some team gives him $6 million, which isn't a whole lot of money, for the guy that wears the green dot on the helmet, who's supposed to be the quarterback. They said, no, that's too much money. Let him go. He's having a good year. I think he's in Denver. And then you have an owner. And I have to ask you this, Mike. Like, when did Lurie become a meddling owner, do you think? Did it start with?
I think he's always been. I think he's always been a meddling owner behind the scenes. You can't convince me otherwise. There have been other things that have transpired over the years with Jeffrey Lurie where he's got his fingerprints on it, but he somehow manages to duck out and let Howie be the front man for the whole thing. I don't think there's any question that this was a Jeffrey Lurie call to replace defensive coordinator.
I'm partial to that as well. I think the general manager has a lot to do with it too. I just, some GMs, like the most successful GMs in history that I'm aware of, selected players and let the coaches coach the players. What this team hasn't done this year, and the best coaches at the pro level do this, they cater their personnel or tailor their scheme to the personnel on the roster. This team is at best when they run the ball. And I know that Jalen had an MVP type season last year, and I know they got a legitimate in a receiver in A.J. Brown, and an A1 in Devontae Smith, and a good pass-catching tight end. But this team is built to run the ball. And I'm not one of those guys that they got to run the ball more. That's not what I'm saying. This team isn't schemed to run the ball. This team runs 6 plays out of 4 or 5 different formations. and they continue to struggle with situational football. This weighs heavy on the head coach, and the head coach is starting to get some heat. We're past the coordinators. We know what they are, and for the third year in a row next season, they're going to have a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator. There's no question about it. So the head coach is starting to get some heat, and again, I like him. I like the way he coaches in a lot of ways, but he is clearly like it's a cliche. He lost the team, lost the locker room. I'm not saying that, but he has certainly lost control of something because week after week, these screaming matches, it was 40 seconds that one play they couldn't get in the ball. They're running personnel on and off the field. Coaches are barking at each other. Like this is truly dysfunctional. And that kind of stuff starts, with distractions. Distractions derail seasons. I've told you this for months. And the other thing is when there are too many cooks in the kitchen. And that's what's happening. The owner's involved. The general manager's involved. These guys should not be involved with scheme, with production meetings on Tuesdays. The most successful teams, these guys don't do that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I have been told by many people in the know that along all these years since he bought into the analytics, Jeffrey Lurie, and he is obviously from the jump is a believer that passing wins in this game and not running. And you blend those two things out, and I've been told that in previous even wins in seasons past, there would be conferences where the owner would say, yeah, we won, but how come we were running the ball too much? That's not really the way you can consistently win. And also the analytics say X. So this is the type of owner he's been, and he can't con anybody now by just staying in the background and not being a Jerry Jones about the whole thing. But let's look, even if we have just discredited the owner and general manager and we blame them for their part in this whole thing, let's look at Sirianni. He's got a 21-6 lead at halftime. At that point in the third quarter, the owner general manager ain't got nothing to do with it. And so it is all on the coach now to manage the game the rest of the way. And how did he manage it? He watched the Cardinals blast them for 4 straight touchdowns. That's how he managed. Now, a head coach should be able to stop the bleeding with a team like the Cardinals.
3-win team with three opening day starters playing on Sunday. They didn't punt, Mike. The punter didn't. The Cardinals punter never walked on the field.
I got to be honest with you. And listen, I know he had 10-1 immunity, but Nick Sirianni doesn't nearly get enough blame. This is a town that blames coaches heavy after games. Now, Andy Reid took a lot of crap game after game after game, even though he had a great record. We were always ready to blame Andy Reid. We were always ready to blame Doug Peterson. This guy, somehow, we're not ready to blame yet. But I think he deserves a lot of the blame for how this season has disintegrated. So now let's look ahead. And let's just fathom what could be here. The most optimistic Eagle fan will say, wow, they'll finally play their best game somewhere along the line. No, maybe it's next week against the Giants. Who knows? Could they get beat by the Giants next week? The way they're playing, certainly they could get beat. I don't think they'll get beat, but let's just say they play just balls out against the Giants, and they go into the playoffs with a little bit of a head of steam. And then they win their first game against an inferior team in their building. Is there any way do you think this fan base could be brought back into the optimistic ring?
I mean, the homers will be. There's a lot of homers out there that still have confidence.
You think there's a homer left after what they've witnessed?
Yeah, I do. I think the Eagle fan base has changed a lot over the last 10 years. A lot. It's the younger cats. They don't know. They don't know, Mike. They don't know about the lean years. They don't know the Buddy. Even before Buddy got there, the playoff droughts, even with Buddy. How weird it was with Marion Campbell. How weird it was with Ray Rote. This fan base is a lot younger, and that's okay. That's what they've had a lot more success, and good for them. Good for them. They didn't suffer like me or you. But I think there's a few. I'm telling you right now, I don't care who they play in the playoffs. They're one and done. They're one and done.
Oh, you believe that they will not win their first round game At New Orleans or at Tampa?
They're not going to be Tampa. They're going to lose to Baker Mayfield. I don't think they might beat the Saints. Maybe. It depends on
Well,
their
you just
roster.
said they're not going to win their first-round game.
No, yeah, I'm not going to be confident. I'm picking them to lose. I'm going to tell you I'm picking them to
You
lose.
just said,
Fancy
this is where I got to pin you down. You make an outlandish statement, and then you don't back it.
Right.
You said they're going to lose in the first-round game no matter who they play. I just said, okay, that means they're going to lose at Tampa Bay or at New Orleans. So what is it?
They're going to lose wherever they go. They're going to lose.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but they're going to lose. I think it's going to be Tampa.
I'm going to give you my most optimistic spin. My most optimistic spin is they beat the Giants in the last game of the year, and that game is now a 425 game. And then they beat whoever it is they play on the road. And at least we'll get. Well, I don't even know if this is going to be fun.
San Francisco.
Yeah, it's not going to even be fun because they're going to lose in the second round really badly. And all that does is make this season a Sixer season. A second-round exit.
Oh, no.
And how do we deal with those second-round exits? We don't deal with them very well.
No.
All right. That'll conclude the dissertation over Sunday's debacle. Or debacle. Debacle.
There you go.
Debacle. Did I just say debacle? We had it. Debacle. Against the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. That'll end that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Around the NFL. Not that we even care about what happened in the NFL, but there are a couple of notable things that happened in the NFL. Let's look first at the Lions and Cowboys game. It's funny how now we didn't even care. When we look back, we don't care about the result. But we were kind of invested in that result because it looked like we would root for the Cowboys in that game. So the Lions would lose a game and the Eagles would still get that number 2 seed instead of the number 3 seed. And it looks like the Lions have the game won on a miraculous play where they had a tackle eligible to get a 2-point conversion to win the game. Also, the officials come in, and now there's this controversy on whether the tackle, both two of them, went over to the official, which one reported it as eligible. Here's what I think happened, because it's funny because the telecast showed the video at the end, and they didn't even discuss that. Like, two guys went over. By that, you can presume that maybe both of them said I'm eligible, or this one's eligible, I'm not. There was no commentary that explained that whole thing, why those two guys were over there. Here's what I think happened. I think Detroit tried to pull a fast one. I think they sent two guys over there, and the one guy that was going to be tackle eligible is not the guy that said, I'm eligible. I think it was the other guy that said it, trying to confuse the officials and trying to confuse the other team, and that enabled them to pull off that play. What was your read on that play, Darren?
I have the exact same read as you, particularly because the guy – all right, so 68 had reported eligible all game. Every single time they reported tackle eligible, it was number 68. Number 70 happened to walk over at the same time with the ref. They're both kind of there. He tells them whatever. They might have said 70, might have said 68. The ref, there's 100,000 people in that stadium. He hears whatever, probably assumes it's 68 again. They throw it to 70 on the China in the end zone. So, yeah, I think they tried to pull a fast one. Absolutely, and they got burnt for
it. And so they got their pants down because they erased it, and then they get a penalty to push them back. Now, this is where the Dan Campbell thing comes in, Mr. Macho. You knew he was going to go for 2 there. Yeah, he flexes his muscles all game long. He flexes his muscles in public. He flexes his muscles in team meetings, that whole thing. He's just one of those type of guys. Once you get a penalty, it knocks you back to the 7. Why would you consider going for 2? Why would you want to lose the game? The odds of you at the 7 getting that 2-point conversion are very slim. Why at that point would you just not kick the PAT and trust your team who you're playing like them straight up pretty well? Why wouldn't you just trust them in overtime? Was that a reflection of Dan Campbell being a super macho meathead?
Well, I always said, I told you earlier, I think that if Sirianni and Campbell faced off in the playoffs, it'd be the Bonehead Bowl. But a lot of coaches are overly are aggressive these days, but not from the seven. That's just a bad move. That's just a bad. You're not being responsible as a head coach in that situation.
All right, so it's the overly macho
Yeah,
bonehead.
yeah.
All right, meathead.
Meathead. There you go.
Yeah, Dan Campbell's the
Knuckle
definition of
dragger.
meathead. Not that it hasn't worked so far. I think it's got a shelf life, but it's working so
That
far. And the Lions may be a tough out in the
yeah,
playoffs.
that shtick only goes so far, as you know.
Yeah, it eventually wears out. All right, next, Panthers owner David Tepper. He's had a lot of problems with that team. Can't find a head coach. They're always discombobulated. He's one of these nouveau rich guys that now come into sports that really change the landscape of like they have this license to be obnoxious because they're rich and entitled. And so he throws a drink at a fan who was, I guess, heckling him. And now, listen, I would love to throw drinks at fans, but that's me. Like I'm Mike Missanelli. I'm an idiot. He's the owner of a football team. You can't throw a drink at a fan. Like, what is he possibly thinking? Yeah, and the previous owner flipped the bird at somebody, right? Like these guys, these new owners that come into play here, do not understand that they can't act like entitled, spoiled brats who own the team.
Yeah, back in 2009, by the late Bud Adams for the Titans flipped a bird at a Bills fan, and the league fined him $250,000. And that's what?
Yeah.
I'm losing track of years.
Right.
5 years ago, or 15 years ago, whatever it is. So he's going to get banged for a nice chunk of change.
All right, Baltimore Ravens have a juggernaut.
Oh my God, you were on them early, dude. You were on them real early before they were.
Yeah, they're so well coached year after year. They play the same way. They hit you in the mouth consistently. They never allow for any kind of slip off on their style of play. And so most likely, I mean, if you can read the tea leaves here, this certainly to me looks like a Ravens 49ers Super Bowl. My question to you is, who will be favored in that game?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I think it'll be Baltimore 2.5. It's not going to be. You're not going to give either team 3. Baltimore did kind of punch him in the mouth in their stadium, so I think they'll be the favorite because of that. I want to add, like I said, that you were on. There's 2 teams you were on early this year, and both of them. Well, one's going to play the national championship game. That's Washington, and Baltimore's the other team. They look like they're poised for the Super Bowl. So kudos to you being on both those teams from very early on this year.
Last thing on around the NFL has nothing to do with the NFL. It has to do with college football bowl games. I don't know what can be done about this as far as the guys opting out now. You've allowed the kids to not play in a bowl game for fear of injury or for the sake that they're going to transfer and go into the transfer portal and all that kind of thing. And it's really thrown college football bowl games into a tizzy, in addition to what the NIL and the transfer portal have already done. How do you stop an opt-out in a bowl game? Is there going to be a 12-team playoff next year? It'll be interesting to see if those guys opt out when they're still in contention for a national championship. Because a lot of guys are going to go into the draft played in that Final Four that we just witnessed, which is going to end with Michigan playing Washington for the national championship. So maybe that's the guard against the opt-outs when more teams will be involved in trying to win a national championship. But if that doesn't work, how else do you do it? And an idea came to my head here. Could you structure in a national letter of intent that when you sign with a team that if you opt out of a bowl game, which is part of the whole package, you have to be available to play all these games, and we're giving you this scholarship, and we're giving you this money, and now it's pay for play, that we can then withhold pay from you or have you actually pay your own tuition for that last season that you're playing, that you opt out of the bowl game. Now, that would be challenged in court and would probably never fly.
Yeah.
But would that be a solution?
It's hard for me to look for a solution because I can't blame these kids. I really don't. And plus, if you do that, Mike, you're going to have a lot of guys coming up with, hamstring injuries at the end of the season. And, oh, I twisted my ankle. It really hurts. I don't think I can go. So, and, at that point, what are you going to do? So I think there are ways around. There's not a whole lot you can do. I think maybe you're onto something with structuring your letter of intent. But you have to leave some sort of a way out for these kids. I really don't blame any of them unless they're playing in a really big bowl game if they want to opt out. I mean, who the hell?
I don't blame
Why not opt out of a
anybody.
Holiday Bowl?
I don't blame anybody who's a first-round draft pick.
Yeah. Well, you don't see
Yeah, to me,
guys
it doesn't make, like, if you're a no-brainer draft pick, then you risk injury, and I get it. But what has made you that viable to be a first-round draft pick is the years that you've shown as a college player. So it's a double-edged sword for me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Mike Missanelli podcast continues, and we're going to take a little detour here and put some smiles on your face, hopefully. Our next guest is a great story. His name is Holden Barter. He's a kid from Newtown who is now going to make it big in the Nashville country music scene. And what we're going to do for you today is we're going to give you a little sample of Holden, who did an Eagles song. Now, here's the way the story works. First of all, hello, Holden. How you doing?
How you doing? It's great to see you, Mike, and thanks for having me on. This is so cool.
Our pleasure. What you did was, first of all, you're a country music guy, and you're trying to make it big. And I have no doubt that you'll make it big. I heard the song, and we're going to play it for the people in a little bit. But you grew up in Newtown, PA. Your whole family's from Northeast Philly and Holmesburg.
Yeah.
And of course, you went to Newtown Friends School, which is haughty, George School, which is haughty, Lafayette College, and then you transfer to Belmont University in Nashville. And obviously, Nashville is the country music scene, and you're going to pursue a career in country music. How did you get the affection for country music growing up in Newtown with Northeast Philly Holmesburg roots?
Well, I'll tell you what, it definitely is not the cookie cutter layout that you usually see coming from Nashville. But I was actually born in Houston, so I remember sitting in the back seat of my mom's SUV, and she would blast Garth Brooks and George Strait, and my dad would play it, and we'd go to the rodeo sometimes. So that little 2 years of what I spent as a baby in Houston, I guess, stuck with me. I don't know. I've always loved the storytelling of country music, too, and I actually lost touch with it for a long time. It wasn't until high school, until I started listening to all those old songs I did as a little kid. I was like, oh, man, I remember these songs, and I fell in love with songwriting, kind of got into it, started coming to Nashville, and before you know it, now I live here. So it's been great so far. And, it's definitely not the traditional country music path that you would expect, but it definitely has been an awesome ride so far.
All right, so from Houston, how did you get back up this way? Your family obviously is from here, but how did you guys get to Newtown?
They were down there just for business. My family moved to Newtown, Yardley, Marsville area, Langhorne. Oh my gosh, years ago in the 90s. So my parents have lived all over. So I think they had 20 houses before I was even born. So, but they've kind of traveled all over Bucks County and landed in Newtown. That's where my dad's at now. And so it's cool, being from the area in Philly and then coming to Nashville and being like, wow, like there's other people here that get it. I met so many Eagles fans in Nashville, and they're like, "Oh, dude, you're from Bucks County." I'm like, "I'm from Bucks County," and I met people from Northeast too. It's crazy. There's a lot of Eagles fans down here, so it's been great. But that's a little bit about my background.
That's fantastic. Now, George School is a pretty exclusive boarding school, and I know a lot of celebrities send their friends there. Michael Douglas's kid went to George School. A lot of celebrity. When you were at George School, any celebrities there?
No, but my friend Edwin, who was a classmate of mine, Simon Cowell ended up signing him to a band called Pretty Much, and he left my junior year. So he was my classmate in English class, and so he's off in L.A. doing his thing. So he's the only one I can think of, comes off the top of my head. But
all right, this is awesome. So let's play the song first, because you record a song which is Eagles oriented about or the person in the song falling for a Dallas Cowboy lady,
Yes.
and she somehow gets converted to
She
to
does.
to being an Eagles fan,
She
right?
does.
Which is a great premise. Now, what is the song called?
It's called Go Birds. Easy enough to remember.
Well,
It's
Go Birds. All right, Darren, can we play a little Go Birds right now? All right, go ahead.
The Cowboys are sure gonna miss her. I hate to break it to them, she looking better in green. Tomorrow she was planning on leaving, but she done went and changed her philosophies. Was it the fans? Was it the lights? Could have been my arm wrapped around her all night. I knew she was the one when she said the words, not the words you might think. Oh man, she said go birds.
All right, that is awesome, and put a smile on my face. How did you get this to the attention of the Eagles? Because it caught some fire. You put it out on Instagram or whatever, and somehow the Eagles heard it. And what was their response to it?
Well, they commented on my Instagram reel. I posted one video of the song teasing it. I'm like, hey, if there was a Dallas Cowboys fan that falls in love with an Eagles fan and never goes back to Texas, check this out. And then it was like the most informal thing. And so many players saw it. The Eagles commented. They literally said, playing this on repeat. So I was like, all right, I got to put it out now. I can't not put this thing out. So, but the storyline is just awesome. I was like, how do I make backtrack. 2 years ago, I put out a song called Stone Harbor. My whole family spent their summers in Wildwood and down the shore, and then they moved to Stone Harbor, and so I grew up going both the Wildwood and Stone Harbor. So I put out a song called Stone Harbor, and everyone there loved it. It was cool. I love it. And I was like, how do I get, Philly going? That was just Jersey, South Jersey. I'm like, how do I get the whole city behind, something awesome? And I thought of the Go Birds song. And I was like, why not make it about Dallas and, a big kind of, subtle middle finger to Dallas. Who doesn't love a friendly rivalry, But no shout out to Dallas. I love all my Texas fans. But, who doesn't love a friendly rivalry, right? And so the song you're taking the girl, from them, and she falls in love with the Eagles fan, and why wouldn't she, So
yeah, and she shifts her loyalties completely to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a great premise.
Fictional, but actually the comments though, there are a lot of Cowboys Eagles couples out there that I'm learning. So,
all right, well, how long have you been playing? When did you start? Obviously you play guitar.
Yes, so I write songs, I play guitar, I sing. So I moved to Nashville in 2019. I started playing music in 2013 as a hobby. I actually was a tennis player. I try to play as much as I can, but I found a blue guitar-shaped paperclip on top of my tennis bag during a match one day. And I was like, how the heck did that get there? I took it as a sign from the universe to start playing. And it wasn't until, I think, my freshman year of college, at Lafayette, before I transferred to Belmont here in Nashville, when I started posting a little bit, and people were like, hey, you should post more and start singing more. I was like, all right, cool. So I started doing that. I started coming to Nashville. I met a manager who helped me for a long time. She was great, Jordan, and started coming down here for songwriting. And before you know it, I ended up transferring to Belmont University for music business here. I worked at a record label, and now we're doing it full time. So it's been a crazy journey.
It really is. This is such a cool story. We're talking to Holden Barter, who is a Philly area kid who spent all the summers at the Jersey Shore. His family was originally from Northeast Philly. His uncle Ed Macklin is the Quaker City String Band. In the Quaker City String Band, you performed in the Barefoot Country Music Fest in Wildwood with your band from Nashville. This is a tough road for people that want to make it in this industry, especially, Nashville is just overrun with people who have your kind of dream. So where do you stand right now? Do you have an agent? Like, what's the next move for you to break through? You're 25 years old, so you got a lot of time, I assume.
Well, thank you. I last summer at Barefoot was awesome. I would love to do it again this summer too. And for me, we're just about to secure a management deal with a company here in town, so that should definitely help. I've met so many great songwriters and folks here in town. I have an excellent network of folks that I built trust with, who are definitely pushing me along the right path and whispering in my ear. And it's been an amazing ride. And not only to, go to school for music business, but to also, work at a record label. Actually, after I graduated, I ended up working as a marketing manager at an entertainment firm here in Nashville to gain that experience. And I was originally a client of theirs, and Tim, the owner, shout out to Tim Gray, he ended up hiring me and said, hey, why don't you get the experience working with us selling tickets, on our end, and, we'll hire you so you get the experience and you can learn instead of, working with us as a client. And that was a great experience. So I've kind of built up all these little different pools of experiences, and now I'm kind of throwing it all in one pot and be like, all right, let's do this thing as an artist. And it's been great. So this year, I'm dropping the Go Birds song January 12th. I've got a lot more that's coming. I want to put out an EP this summer. I want to play festivals. I want to tour hop in the fall. There's a lot I want to do. And but I know with the city like Philly and with fans like Philly, you can do anything. And, Philly's got your back. And what's so funny? I was on with a fan, E-Rock, last night. And he's a notable Eagles fan. And
yeah, I know E-Rock.
We were talking about how, some artists, I don't know if you noticed, but artists will go to different cities and stadiums and wear the different jerseys of whatever city they're in. And I'm like, I can't do that as an Eagles fan. I'm sorry. You can do that with any other team, but you can't do it if you're an Eagles fan. So, but no, it's all well and good, and lots of big goals for this year. I'm a big kind of motivational or early morning person, guys. So, I'm up and at it, and really excited for this year ahead, and it's going to be great.
Listen, Holden, thanks so much for coming on. On the way out, we're going to play. We're going to play it again. Go Birds. It drops January 12th. Best of luck to you, man, and it was a delight to have you on. And thanks for repping the Eagles. Although, like 6 weeks ago, it would have been a little more enthusiastic. All of a sudden,
well, the quickest I could get it out. So I actually had it written for 2 months, and the quickest I could get it out, according to Spotify and all that, was the 12th. And I was like, well, that's just perfect timing, isn't it? So I'm hoping that maybe it does something. Maybe it helps corral the team in the city. But I know Philly does best when the whole city's behind the sports team. And let's get that Super Bowl this year, man. I'm hoping for it.
All right, man. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you. Let's play a little bit. Let's play it again, Darren. Here it is. Go Birds by Holden Barter.
The Cowboys are sure gonna miss her. I hate to break it to them. She looking better in green. Tomorrow she was planning on
All right, man.
leaving,
Thanks to Holden Barter. That was pretty cool. Local kid, Bucks County kid, trying to make it big in Nashville. And I think he's got the chops, and I think he's got the personality. All right, that'll do it for Mike Unleashed today. I have one final thought before we get out of here, and it's about A.J. Brown. I'm tired of him. Listen, I know he's a great player, but I got into an argument with Seth Joyner about this, that if you told, what's the problem with him not talking? Because all he's going to say is something negative and blah, blah, blah. And I get that part of it. But the same thing applies if you don't talk. If you make it a point not to talk, and you make it a point that you're disgruntled, you're too disgruntled to talk, that message also gets into the locker room. And it's just as poisonous. So A.J. Brown, listen, I know we've got to live with wide receiver divas these days, but I'm focused on him not getting any blame for this. I don't care if he talks to the media. But to make it a point of not talking to the media, it's what's poisonous. Because guys look at that and go, look at AJ. Wow, he's not happy. I guess we all should be unhappy. He's supposed to be one of our leaders, blah, blah, blah. It's not good for a team. So just say, listen, we're not playing well. I'm tired of it. We got to change some things around. Or just escape. Like, don't be there. Like, don't make it a point that you're not talking to the media, because that's the point he's trying to make.
He went as far to say as if I have nothing. I was taught if I have nothing nice to say, not to say anything at all. So,
but still, when you say that, you're still spreading a poisonous message.
Agreed.
All right, that'll do it for today's Mike Missanelli podcast. Thanks everybody for hanging in there. I know we were a couple days removed from the actual game on Sunday, but had we done this, I assure you, had we done this on Sunday night, it wouldn't have been productive at all. My ass would have been redder than an an apple in a grocery store. So we waited a couple of days. We processed it. Here's the process. Process is it's not likely that they're going to do anything in the playoffs. Everybody have a great rest of the day. If you want to get in touch with me, Mike at MikeMiss.com. And you can also check me out on Twitter at MikeMiss25. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great couple of days. We'll be back at you at the end of the week. For Darren, I'm Mike Missanelli. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.